lot of times in Airtable, when you're building linked records, you might create some sort of versioning. For example, you could have quotes, and you might produce multiple versions of a quote over time, and you want to increment the counting of those quotes by 1 so that each version gets the next number. Well, figuring out exactly how to do this in Airtable can be a little bit tricky, especially if you're new to the platform. So I'm going to be breaking down the exact steps to follow to get this functionality so that you can properly track versioning inside of your Airtable solution. So if learning more about version increments is of interest to you, stick around and let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Gareth and this is Gap Consulting. It's my mission here to help you unlock the full potential of no-code tools, and Airtable is one of our favorite no-code tools here in 2025 and I'm sure beyond. So in this video, as I already said, we're going to be covering versioning, which is when we create multiple records that link to a source record. I'm going to go ahead and break this down step by step in this video, and this can be a little complicated, but if you're struggling, just follow along step by step on your own screen. Feel free to pause, of course, rewind, do all that to get the output that we're going to drive for here. I'm going to show you a couple of different versions of how to get these results as well, because you don't have to do it my way. So there are a couple of different ways that you can approach it, and I'll walk through them here. Now, before we get to the heart of the video though, I do want to first invite you to join me for some training. I've put together a free Airtable crash course. It teaches the basic features of Airtable for anybody who's new to the platform that wants to learn how this tool really works and what it's capable of. You can grab my free training at gapconsulting.io/airtable-crash-course. Without further ado though, let's hop on into my screen, and I'm going to first start in the data layer and walk you through how we set this up at a data side. So again, for our example, this is quotes that we're producing. So the quotes are going to be the primary table, and we have them in the leftmost table here. And then we've got a table for versions where we're connecting to the quote. So imagine that we're working on, producing like an estimate in this example. And we're going to have the quote is created, and the first one is going to be version 1, second one is version 2, etc., etc. So what we need to do is basically fill out that value right here. What is the version number of the next upcoming component, right? There's a number of different ways we can do this. One of them leverages AI, one of them leverages automation. Also, there are some nuances within how we get that calculation, which I'll walk through with you here in a moment as well. But to decide whether you want to do AI or automation, I think the big thing is going to come down to how many automation credits and how many AI credits you have available on your plan. So really it will come down to you. If you're leveraging automation a lot already, you might want to lean into the AI because you get some credits on both of these things for every Airtable plan. Similarly, if you're already using a ton of AI, well then maybe you want to use the automation component for this. So let's go ahead and break down the steps on how to get you here. So first and foremost, I have the version number here, and this is just a number field. And also note that I've got my link to quotes, right? So this is an important one. Obviously, we need to know what we're linking to in the first place. And so over here on quotes, I've got 3 different, potential things that we could be providing quotes for: an Acme quote, a web development quote, a professional services quote. Each one of those we are tracking here. So we're linking it in the version, and I've grouped by the quote linked field. Now we're going to increment the version count. So when you're building this on your own, if you're using a standard number field here, you can just drop in a few of these as test data, just like I've done. Just say 1, 2, 3, and then it might be helpful for you to sort by that version so that you can see it here just like that. You can see that our web development quote is missing a number here. We're going to get to this in a minute when we get to our testing. So we've got this out, and then the first step after building that is to then go back to your quotes table. And here's where you've got a nuanced difference. You can use a count field or you can use a roll-up field. And the function that we're trying to get here is to figure out how many current versions we've created. So let's break down the pros and cons of using these different methods. The count this field is going to look at the versions that we've linked to for each of these quotes. And we're going to say only count the versions where we don't yet have a number filled out in that version number. So again, if you recall, let's go ahead and save this. Back here on versions, we've got the web development quote that is missing a version right now, right? It doesn't have a number. So the counting system will only count 2 here. So if we go back to quotes here and we verify this, we're going to see that that web development quote right here, that only counts 2 versions, even though we have 3 versions linked here, obviously linked, right? That's what we want to get out of this functionality, because what we're trying to do is figure out how many versions have we created already that have numbers so that we can calculate the next number that we should be creating. In this case, that would be 3, right? But we'll get to that. The other option for you, if you don't like counts, you might use the max. So we can use a roll-up field here. Same thing, kind of. We're looking at the linked relationship here of our linked versions, and we're looking at the version number, and we're bringing in the max value. Now, the reason I kind of like the roll-up a little bit more is it gives me some more flexibility. Because what it's doing is it's looking over at those versions, and it's finding the biggest version number. So it kind of assumes that you're going to be having one version for every record. But let's say I made this particular version number 5. I'm just going to plug in a 5 there and ignore the AI for now because it's going to automatically generate something that doesn't make sense. But let's go ahead and go back to our 5. If we look at our web development quote on the quotes table, we are now going to see that the roll-up field knows that we are on max version 5 right now. So it would, if we follow this logic throughout, use that to increment 1 more for our next version. So up to you what you do in this step, but you're going to need one of these 2, either the count field or the roll-up field that's looking at the max values. Again, if you go back into that roll-up, you do the max values aggregation down here after you've mapped it to that version. And it's going to find the biggest value in your versions, and that's what we're pulling in. Now, for our purposes, I stuck with the count. So let's go ahead and delete the roll-up field. I'm just going to wipe it out, and let's imagine that we go with count. So here, I'm going to go into my versions again. Now that I've got my field in my primary table, for us, that's our quotes table. I've got that count field, I've got that roll-up field. Now I'm going to look it up back here. So what we've done is we build a lookup field that looks at the quotes and says, hey, for this quote, for the Acme quote, what is the value that we counted or rolled up? For us, that was 3. Similarly down here, what is that value for the professional services quote? So let's go back and we'll verify. Professional services quote is right here. The version count is 2. And so we're bringing that back in right here, plugging that in, right? So pretty straightforward. So that's just a lookup field. It's going to always reflect whatever that thing is counting on the primary table. Now the next one's really simple. All we have is a simple formula here or function. And we're just saying, hey, take that current version value and add 1 to it. Just increment it by 1. Now, you might at this point think like, gosh, I heard that Airtable had an auto number field, right? Why don't I just use an auto number? Well, yes, it's true. Airtable does have an auto number field, but it cannot create auto numbers within that cohort. So as you see, it just kind of randomly assigns numbers to these things, and it will consistently increment by 1 from every point here on out. So it's just going to take whatever the value is, whatever the max value is, and increment by 1. So it's not doing it within that linked relationship. And that's why auto numbers don't cut it here. We can't use the auto number alone. We need something more advanced. So we've now created this function that calculates the next version. And here's where we have an option of either doing an automation or doing AI, right? So simply put, we can build an automation that says, when I create a new record here that does not have a version number, look up the next version number and plug it in, right? Let me show you what that would look like. Here we just created a new record. Ignore AI for a moment because it's doing calculations that are not where we are yet. But I just built a new version here. It does not yet have a version number. I can build an automation that plugs this in. If you're choosing automations, here's what that looks like. First, build a trigger that says record matches conditions. I'm looking at the versions table, and I'm going to go down here and say I want the version number to be blank. If it's empty, that's what should trigger this automation. So let's choose that record. We just added one, right? Just a moment ago. So we have that record now. We're going to move forward with it. What are we going to do? Well, the automation is going to update that record. How? It's going to find that version. Let's plug in that Airtable record ID, which came from the trigger right here. And all we want to do is update the version number. With what value? Well, it's a dynamic value. It's going to change every time. So we have to hit that gear icon and move this to dynamic. And then we're plugging in the value that we calculate in next version. That's why we built that formula. We can take the value from that formula, plug it in here, and that will automatically populate our next version. So really quickly, let's flip back to Airtable. This is empty. All we're telling the automation to do is grab that function, that output, 4 in this case, and plug it in here. Simple enough, right? Let's go ahead and run this. Boom. And we'll see it happen right here. Boom, 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 boom. So you see everything updating, right? Everything's updating at once, but really all we care about is that version for this example. We're just taking what was here, was a calculated 4, we're plugging it in there. Now, as soon as that happened, everything else shifted, right? Because now our rollup or our count function over here is adding one more to the count. And that's in preparation for if we add a new version. So now this also updated to 4 because we now have 4 versions. And then that means the next one will be 5. And then when we add a new version and we bring that 5 in, thanks to our automation, then this will all happen again. So that's the automated way of doing this. And honestly, I really like the automated way, but I also really like the AI way. It's a little bit easier, in fact. We can use an AI-generated number field. This first, of course, assumes that your workspace admin has toggled on AI for your workspace and for your database. So you have to have that feature on first and foremost. If you have it on, when you go to add a number field, just like this, you can convert it to an AI agent. When you do this, you can then set up your instructions for the agent and basically tell it, this is how I want you to calculate, all right? Now you can choose, just as you can with all other numbers, what decimal places are you setting to? Do you want 1,000 separator? You know, some standard settings. But you can also toggle on or off the internet search. We don't need it for this example. And you can also elect for it to run automatically. I would recommend this for version counting, but it's up to you, making sure, of course, if you want to minimize your utility of AI, then you might want to make it a manual push. But I prefer the automatic runs. So that's what I've built here in my versioning right here. So you can see I created this very number field. It's an AI generated field, which is denoted by this yellow up here. It's running automatically. I don't mind using the default here, which is 4.1, but frankly, we could probably use any of the low cost options if we wanted to. And I just wrote some instructions and I'm referencing fields inside of Airtable. So my current version field right here, I don't even need that next version formula. I'm referencing the current version and I'm saying, hey, look, we want a numeric value output for the version of this record. Reference the current version that shows the previous version count and add 1 to it. That's its instructions. It's only using 1 credit from AI. That's really nothing. So I went ahead and set it up. And you see that we can run the agent manually, like rerun it if we want to. But of course, it doesn't really make sense to rerun something that's happened in the past. So look at how this agent works. And we can actually take a look at both of these. Let's look at the automation running in parallel to the agent so you can see what it is in terms of speed. So we've got the automation on. I have 4 current versions here. My next version, or my current version says 4, that's correct. My next version says 5, that's correct. All I'm gonna do is add another one right here, and let's see which one generates first. We see this is generating. I think this one won. The automation beat the the automation beat the AI, and it actually had a funny output. So what happened was the automation brought in the number 5 first. Then the AI was generating at the same time, but once this got numbered to 5, This updated the current version count, which meant that the AI then assumed that this was number 6. So there was a bit of a logical, disconnect there. But if we were only running one of these, either the version count with an automation or the version count with AI, we would have gotten to the proper number of 5. It looks like the automation beat the AI just a little bit, but again, bear in mind that you have options. So that flexibility is something for you to consider when you're setting up your version counting. But I hope that you see how this can allow you to track versioning within your linked relationships. So we can now increment the way that we're counting the linked records to the Acme quote, or to the professional services quote, or to the web development quote. So this is all now being incremented automatically thanks to our automation and thanks to our AI counts. Of course, as you see, they're working against each other right now. So choose the one that makes the most sense for you and stick with that. I hope you got a ton of value from this video. If you did, we would love a thumbs up and a subscription to the channel, of course. If you have questions that we didn't address, swing by our website because we have a ton of resources there for you. Of course, the most important thing though, keep on building.